Apologies for absence, please.
We have apologies, Madam Mayor, from Councillors Moody, Lewis and Mrs Roberts.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is declarations of interest. The usual paragraph. If anybody has any to record now, please do. If and when they come up, please remember to let us know. Item 3, little a, to confirm the minutes of the meeting of Tavistock Town Council held on the 21st of June, which are enclosed with your papers. So everybody had, thank you, Councillor Smith and Councillor Ward. Sorry, because both hands went up at the same time. Thank you very much. I shall sign those, please. Does anybody have any matters arising from those minutes? Is that a yes, Mrs Wickham? Your pen's up, yes. Right.
Too late, no, you just brought it.
Okay. Right, the next section is major policy items requiring determination by the council. So the council lettings policy. Item 4, the report is enclosed. Right, I'm just rifling through. Are you leading on this, Mr Town Clerk, or we're just going through it?
I'll just...
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the consolidation or bringing together, if you like, of the various policy statements that we've made over the last 4 or 5 years in relation to the letting of council premises. It does relate specifically to the commercial letting arrangements as opposed to any community or residential arrangements. So most of this is existing council policy. There are 3 sets of recommendations in here which seek to take that policy further forward, and that's very much informed by the comments that were made previously by Councillor Rogers in his report and by the views of your professional advisors. And effectively the main new provisions that we're looking at there are covered across in on page 4, there's some recommendations, little 1 and 2, sitting above good practice. And then on the next page, what we actually do there is we identify some shortened time frames which provide a better basis, if you like, for working with tenants to ensure that in the event that a tenant gets into difficulties, that can be identified sooner rather than later, and we can prevent that difficulty becoming worse than otherwise might be the case. And then finally, on page 6, there are 3 additional recommendations which go between page 6 and 7, one of which is about publicising the policy to tenants, the other one of which is effectively saying that for new tenants and for tenants who are renewing leases, there is a change to the payment policy, but not for existing tenants. And then finally, inviting the council to review this after a period of up to 12 months in operation to make sure that you're comfortable that it's working in the way in which it should. It is the view of your officers and your advisors that what we have here is something which is a more robust approach and one which is underpinned by, you'll see there's the RICS Code of Practice for Commercial Leases in England and Wales, which we would intend to also circulate to tenants and to prospective tenants as a basis for helping them to inform their decision making and their thinking around how they operate. For example, in the areas of things such as actually engaging a professional advisor before you enter into a tenancy so that you're receiving independent advice about what to do and how best to do it.
Okay, thank you, Mr Town Clerk. Can I just ask you to note on page 2 under item 6, 6b, the final 3.3, there's a bracket that says A. Can you delete that bracket, please, because it is all of those items in 3.3. Right, before we move on to recommendations, does anybody have any questions, please? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to say, overall, I think this is an excellent document, and thank you very much for all the work that's gone into it. There was one paragraph, however, that I didn't understand, and I think that says more about me than the document, but I'd be very grateful if it could be explained to me. And that is on page 3, 2.6a, authorised guarantee arrangements. I'd be grateful if you could just explain that. Thank you.
This is a provision whereby when you have a tenant who is looking to, for example, sell on his business to somebody else, the tenant actually is required to have the consent of the landlord for the transfer of the lease. In those circumstances, the landlord can, by way of seeking an assurance, seek the agreement of the existing tenant to enter into an ARGA, as it's called, and what that means is that if the incoming tenant were to default in relation to the rent, the liability for that rent can be passed back to the original tenant. So it's a way of protecting the council. In particular, if you actually have an incoming tenant whose provenance you feel is perhaps not quite as strong as the existing tenant because they've got less business experience, that side of things. So it's a safeguard for the council. If the outgoing tenant is actually confident that the incoming tenant can make a go of the business, then they shouldn't have too much to worry about. But it's a safeguard really from the landlord's perspective in that situation.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Rogers?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I raised this issue in the first place and produced a paper on it, I think the outcome is exceptional and I endorse it fully. It's a very good paper now of will put the council in good stead. However, I would like to add one amendment to it, and that is 2.8 item 1. Before we send out that initial letter, as we all know, communication in the world is most important, and there is no verbal consultation with the debtor or anybody else. And I think it's absolutely imperative that we add a section to cover that. In my business, which is, I have tenants, if someone doesn't pay the rent, we ring them within 2 days. I've got one lady, she's got more excuses than I've had off dinners, but at the end of the day, she makes an excuse of why she can't pay the rent, but she can't pay all of it, but she can pay some of it. So she pays some of it. So that day wasn't such a bad day. So what I would like to add is that after the due date of rental payment is due and before the letter is sent out, a council officer makes phone contact with the tenant to ascertain is there any good reason not to have made payment. And from that, I've got a slip there. Copy. Thank you very much. I feel it would help the officers in whatever action they need to take in the future.
Is this a formal proposal?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Sheldon. Right. Are there any other questions? Because then I'm going to go through the recommendations, going backwards and working our way forwards throughout the document. Okay? Right. So, if we go to page 2, the recommendations, the Council affirm the enclosed policy position and endorse the adoption of same as a codified basis where applicable for the management of its commercial leasehold properties, and little b, endorse and adopt the recommendations included at paras 2.6, 2.9 and 3.3. With the added codicil amendment from Councillor Rogers, seconded by Councillor Sheldon. Are you both happy to accept all of those without getting new proposers and seconders?
Well, I'll formally propose that we approve the council letting policy and that we... Oh, yeah. Strange. I formally propose that we accept we approve the council letting policy and accept the recommendations contained in it, including the amendment that's already made.
Okay, thank you. Right. Councillor Rogers, you happy to second that? All of that?
Yes.
Yep. Right, can I see all those in favour, please?
That's carried.
That's carried. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Right, item 5 is service plans. Did you mention about that? Right. So we now start on the corporate service plan, which I think is the general manager, or is that you?
Myself this time.
Yourself this time. Off you go again.
Just really by way of context of what the service plans are seeking to endeavour to achieve. These are really trying to set out within the overall strategic framework which will emerge from your strategic plan, which is currently being worked on, the basis of the work programme for the council over the course of the next civic year. So effectively it's identifying the context within which we're operating, whether it's the corporate or indeed the community service plans you've got. The main tasks which we're inviting you to endorse, many of these are ongoing, but some of these will be new, and the time frames within which they're going to be delivered. And then it goes on to look at the consultations that are anticipated over the course of the next 12 months, the performance indicators that you've agreed as measures of council success, and indeed the risks that attach to delivery of the council's work programme. The essence of what these documents are is these, if you like, provide the platform for what you're going to do over the course of the year. If you're comfortable with what they are, that's what your officers are instructed and tasked with going away and doing. And then, effectively, if something else comes up during the year, what we would then be looking to do, if it's a major item, would be to actually reflect back and say, well, does it achieve the goals and objectives of the council as well as these? Can it be delivered alongside them? Or indeed, does it need to replace one or other of these? But this, if you like, is the foundation from which you go forward over the course of the next year. And clearly, if additional demands come in, it may well be that some of those are not capable of being delivered alongside these. So it's important that as members you're comfortable that these do represent the things that you feel are important for the council to seek to achieve.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, the first question I'd like to ask Madam Mayor is, does this item include the review of 15 to 16, which is a document which was attached to the service plan?
My apologies, thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Yes, what you will also see appended to each one of the service plans are, as you've said, the review of 15, 16. These effectively are reflecting, hold those there, these effectively are reflecting back on what we set out to do, what we actually did, and a very short commentary. They're an opportunity, I suppose, to see in relation to the high-level task that the council has set itself, whether or not you're comfortable with the progress that we've made against those in a shorthand version, if you like. They reflect effectively not just what we said we were going to do in last year's service plan, but you'll see on the second page there's also those items which came up in year, which are additional to the service plan, and which we delivered on top, if you like, of the things we were tasked with at this time last year.
Councillor Smith.
Well, there are two items really, Madam Mayor. The first is, if we're considering these documents, I think it's a really good opportunity to say thank you, or we should be saying thank you, to all members of staff who were involved with the Man Engine project. I realise that there were some difficulties in some areas, but fully appreciative of the work that actually had to be done by Tavistock Town Council members of staff to ensure that the event went off as it did, extremely successfully, and the national coverage is superb for the town. The second item I'd like to raise is the matter which is mentioned several places, is the matter of IT or ICT. What I want to ask the officers is, I realise that there was some IT training taking place this morning, and I would like to know whether the council is now in a position with its IT ability to A, keep the brand new super website fully functional, up to date, live, and carrying all the important information that it should to the town and to a wider audience. And secondly, are we now in a position to ensure that the so-called members area is developed quickly and then available to the authority to use.
The honest answer is I haven't yet had a debrief with the staff who were on the training, or at least not a full debrief. I've had a brief conversation with them. In terms of the population of the website, the trainee has covered what needs to be done and how. The trainer has gone back and is also looking at what the functionality is, if you like, at the back end, because there are still some issues around certain types of documents, if they are large documents and scanned, and how those can actually be uploaded, and indeed if they can be uploaded without actually physically being broken down. So that's some feedback I've had. I don't know if, excuse me. Beyond that, I said, until we've actually had a debrief with the staff who've been on the training, I don't know any more at this stage, but I'm quite happy once we've had that to have to meet with the member concerned and outline to him, and then report back in one of our reports to the next council, if that's agreeable to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right. Okay. And the General Manager, are you going to do the community plan?
I think the Town Clerk covered off the principles of the service plans. I've got nothing to add.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you very much, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a question about the development and introduction of a property maintenance plan. It's headed, that I would read that as a new thing, or is it incorrect to make that assumption?
It will be a new thing. It's been aspirational for over a decade. Is that the best way to put it, Councillor Johnson?
Well over a decade.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. The supplementary to that is, I assume before you embark on this enormous project covering our enormous estate, that there will be some kind of format or template into which you will inject the information and then we can digest it. It will be really useful perhaps before you embark on that big project, perhaps to see the outline of how it's going to take its form.
I'm more than happy to bring the actual template to council. The model that myself and the Town Clerk are currently looking at is based on Historic England's model, which is quite simplified in relation to setting out the maintenance requirements. We have several other options as well that we're looking at, but that's our preferred option at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Thank you.
not reinventing the wheel then.
Oh, definitely not. Right. If we can move down now to item 6, which is appointments. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, can I just ask, is it taken that the plans are endorsed?
Okay, you didn't ask for that. Right, may I have a proposer and a seconder to we endorse the corporate plan and the commercial community plan? Thank you. Thank you, Mrs Johnson. So that's Councillor Smith and Councillor Mrs Johnson. All those in favour, please?
Thank you.
Thank you. That's carried. Right. The little A is the Plans Committee, back on here. It's another good go around the block. Has anybody had a little consideration if they would like to join the Plans Committee? Or when we get our new member, will they just be put on the Plans Committee?
Cool.
Right, we'll go over that one. Right. The next item is the Tavistock Bid Company. At a meeting, I think in early May, 2 members' names came forward as nominees to be members of the bid committee. I have spoken to both of them earlier this afternoon and said that we would like them just to give a couple of minutes as to why they think we should. Councillor Rogers.
Madam Mayor, I'd like my name to be withdrawn from the process, please. Thank you.
Okay, that makes it very easy. Are you sure about that, Councillor Rogers?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Smith, you are duly elected to the Bid Board Company.
having
Limited.
sweated since 4 o'clock.
Yes, because I didn't speak to you. I left a message.
Yeah, I didn't get into the 4 and I've been working ever since on something.
Councillor Sheldon.
Yeah, I'm on a time basis. I take it this will be in November, will it?
Right. I will just shift the mayor's hat one side a moment, and I will put on my bid hat a moment. We talked about that the new bid year starts in September. The AGM, I think, is set for October the 6th, from memory, that we'd probably do it all then. But we may actually just invite the person to come along to watch a meeting in September and then go through the AGM process, because they'd have to go through both. Even if they're co-opted, you've still got to be formally appointed to an AGM. So whether you do it for one meeting or not, we haven't really quite decided. Okay, the mayor's hat will go back on again now. Yeah. Right, congratulations, and I'm sure the town clerk will write to the bid and notify them. Right, little c is the appointment of the Budget and Policy Subcommittee. We have received 5 names, 5 councillors, Councillor Mrs Johnson, Palfrey, Smith, Ward and Williamson, and I would like to ask you all to endorse their appointments, like Councillor Sheldon.
Yes, I know that we were asked at the last meeting, I don't know, councillors who were missing from there, there wasn't a further confirmation email, or they've all been contacted, have they?
Councillor Mrs Ewings, the Mayor,
yes.
She did remind everybody at the last meeting that the only person she had heard from was Councillor Mrs Johnson, and I did remind you all that there was a date for nominations to be submitted. That date has passed. 5 nominations were in by that date, so under most democratic process, those 5 people will now go forward, and that is the end of the matter. Thank you. Please sit.
So there's no further... Well, I'm not nominating myself. I'm just wanting to mention it, how clear it actually was.
An email was sent out, and as I say, I verbally made it clear twice. So, you know, and the assistant to the town clerk did send out a reminder as well. Okay. Right, item 7. General Finance. Little 1, schedule of payments. I believe some questions were submitted by Councillor Mrs Johnson. Have you had satisfactory answers? Thank you.
But I'd like to thank him and the staff in the office for the speedy reply and the comprehensive replies I received. Thank you.
Thank you. Little 2, budget monitoring report. The town clerk has said there will be a full update for the meeting of the 4th of September. Does anyone have anything pressing before now, or can everybody wait until the 4th of September? Okay, thank you. Right, the Plans Committee. To receive and consider the minutes of the Plans Committee held on the 28th of June and the Plans Committee from the 19th of July, in particular with a recommendation arising in connection with application 2022-16 OPA. Councillor Ward, may I ask you to lead, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Plans Committee of Tuesday the 28th of June, numbers 39 through to 46. I don't think there are any contentious issues during that meeting, and I recommend those to full council. Plans Committee of the 19th of July was a little bit more complicated. The meeting was preceded by a presentation by EJF Planning Limited, who are considering a development on Church Road in Whitchurch, above the church, and it's on a greenfield site which lies just outside of the development boundary. We had a fairly lively discussion at the time, and now we can but await the planning process and an application going in. The meeting itself, items 47 to 54, I draw your attention to item 51, town planning issues. We were asked to consider the Plymouth and South West Devon joint local plan and to comment on it. And we felt that we should bring this to full council and make a recommendation for Council to see whether you agree with us. Just to put it very briefly, this is a collaboration between Plymouth, South Hams and West Devon. It excludes the Dartmoor National Park, and it looks at the need for and distribution of housing and employment land across those three areas. And I think it's been taken together because there is an actual interdependence between those three areas, particularly at the boundary zones. As far as West Devon is concerned, the area has been divided up into towns, namely ourselves and Oakhampton, local centres, which, if you like, are smaller towns and big villages, and villages. Sometimes the villages working in collaboration, so one village may have a church, a neighbouring village may have a pub, another one might have a school. The plan envisages the majority of the required new homes to be built in the towns, with a need for something like 2,000 houses to be built in towns, and Tavistock is earmarked for just under 1,200. Our concern is that when you actually look at the plan itself, it envisages basically 6 sites for these houses, and 2 of those sites are Callington Road and Brook Farm, Brook Lane. Now, between them, they account for 865 of the proposed houses. And Council will know that so far there has been no building at all on the Callington Road side, despite the fact that planning permission was granted 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. I know it's been renewed at least once. And similarly, nothing's happened on Brook Lane yet. So the plan is relying extremely heavily on those 2 sites, but at the moment there's no sign of the houses being delivered there. Now, needless to say, prospective developers recognise that. They recognise that West Devon can't claim to have a 5-year land plan, and so we're already beginning to see speculative applications for planning permission on a number of other sites around the town, at least one of which isn't within the development boundary. Hence our concern, and the wording of our recommendation. This one, I think, yes. So, Tavistock Town's Council response is that it is concerned that in the joint local plan, too much reliance is placed on mixed development sites on Callington Road and Brook Lane, and comments on the planning consent having been granted, but so far no building, and then points out our concern about speculative applications for parcels of land which have not been identified in the development plan, in the joint local plan for development. And you can see the precise wording in the minutes there.
Okay. Councillor Sheldon.
Yes, I wanted to ask, I know that you sort of put all the items into a sort of a long range, so I couldn't quite jump in for 53. It's about the planning application that we've got tonight that's been brought, the result was it was deferred until full council. I just wanted to know what the criteria was. I know that it's a major planning application, but I haven't experienced major applications come into full council. One of the reasons why I say that is because you're asking other members to make decisions, and they're not looking at plans all the time. And so they're not as experienced as the Plans Committee. I mean, one of the reasons why we've got a Plans Committee is to get along this experience, and if you need any training, then we can get somebody in to tell you what's what. I just wonder what the criteria was, because apart from that, when there's other major applications, of which we have several, you've mentioned a couple in the major plan, are we to expect that they're going to come to the council? Or who's making the decision? Because we don't seem to have any policy on this to bring them forward. So, as long as we all know where we are and what the policy is, then fine. But if it's just going to go on, we'll take that one to the council, perhaps you could expand on that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Sheldon. Madam Mayor, do you wish us to...
Can we, Councillor Sheldon, can we just finish where we were with this, because this one's been actually taken as a separate item, this application. So if we can finish off doing the minutes of these before we come to that bit, that would be good. So I think, first of all, on item 51, Councillor Ward is seeking a seconder for the recommendation that is sent forward on behalf of this council to the officers dealing with the joint local plan. Is there a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Mrs Whitcomb. Does anybody, this is open for debate now, does anybody have anything they wish to add, comment on, etc. for this item? No? Okay then. So if we can just leave that now as parked. We need a seconder for the previous set of minutes on the 28th of June. So thank you very much, Councillor Mrs Whitcomb. If we can leave those as there. Going back now to this application, Councillor Sheldon, it literally only arrived in the office on the day of that meeting. It hadn't been here before. Mrs Smallacombe will confirm that, that it literally, as a mountain of paperwork, arrived on that day. The reason it then had to come here is because of the time limits set out by West Devon Borough Council. We don't have a meeting until they're next, gone past their consultation period for that application. So it needed to come here tonight. We also made a decision after the Butchers Park, when it was brought up at the West Devon Borough Council planning meeting, that only so many councillors, i.e. I think 3 with the numbers banded, had made a decision, and West Devon Borough councillors on this council made the comment up there that only 3 members had felt, had been at that meeting to make a decision. This council was never going to be put in that situation again by anybody. So the decision then to bring forward a larger application to members of 17 councillors who have then had the opportunity to come in and everything else, that is what has gone on with this application now, and I will leave the rest now to Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as you've heard, we consider this to be a major application and likely to attract a great deal of public interest. It's an application by Kavanagh Homes to build up to 148 houses. This is an outline planning application, so it doesn't contain details yet of house design, although there are some indicative drawings in the paperwork and an indicative map. The site is to the west of New Launceston Road. It starts at the northern end at where the toll house is, where New and Old Launceston Roads join, and then it comes down 3 fields down the hill to the west of the New Launceston Road. There would be one vehicle opening, on one driveway opening onto New Launceston Road, about halfway down the site. There's a lot of technical information in the very substantial bundle of papers relating to the application, discussing drainage and landscape and all sorts of things you might imagine, including transport. I understand that the site previously had planning consent for a garden centre, and there's been some quite clever wording in some of the paperwork that I didn't read it every word but scanned, discussing what impact there would be from this development over and above whatever impact there would have been from the garden centre. For example, vehicle movements. The number of vehicle movements cited in the paperwork struck me as being rather few. However, another item I think that we need to think about is the 3 fields that are identified for this development are not on the joint local plan. They have not been allocated for building on the joint local plan. Now, the joint local plan isn't in place yet. We heard from Councillor Jory that hopefully it will be enacted early next year. But nevertheless, the plan is there, and there are some sites that have been identified for development, but this isn't one of them. However, the next 2 fields south of this site have been identified for housing development, so potentially, if this application is approved, then there could be 5 fields built on to the west of the New Launceston Road. Oh, yes, New Launceston Road, yes. So I think it's for us to decide whether we feel this is an appropriate development in an appropriate site. And I look to Council for guidance as to whether we should support this application or whether we should oppose it or adopt a neutral position. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Sheldon.
Yes, I'm not getting up just to have a go at yourself or the system. It would have been nice to have had the top, because of time limits, we've deferred it to the council. I would have been satisfied with that, not having to ask and the reasons why. I'm going to extract myself from this discussion on this area because it's on Tavistock North Ward. I'm a substitute on the planning committee, and we know what major applications like this, they do get complicated. You do get picked out that, well, you were at the meeting when it was approved or it wasn't approved, because people remember, they can read minutes, etc., who was present. So I'm extracting myself. It's not really interest. It's just that I won't be involved with a vote or any dealings with this. And perhaps you could make a note on the minutes that I've extracted myself. Thank you.
Can I just answer the first bit back, Councillor Sheldon, that an email was sent to all members the following morning from myself and Councillor Ward, sent via Mrs Smallacombe, to say why this application was being heard here tonight and the reasons why.
Well, I didn't read that bit. I looked, the word deferred, because deferred has more, instead of it's going to, deferment is more of a decisional term. Did you want to ask anything else?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I normally refrain from making comment on planning applications in this forum simply because of my role on Planning and Licensing Committee at West Edinburgh Council. But in this instance, I would like, please, to record a potential personal interest, simply because the entrance to the proposed development would have the traffic from that would have an impact on the route to where I live. I live off Herdwick Road down in Perrin Road, and clearly any major development there could potentially affect me. So I would declare a personal interest on that basis.
Thank you for that. Right, does anybody else have any comments or anything else that they would wish to make about this application? Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Have we got a recommendation from the Plans Committee on this yet?
No, because it hasn't been to us because it only arrived that morning.
What I'd like to say on the issue then is, if it is not included in the plan that is existing, and the Plans Committee have been quite consistent on refusing applications that are outside of that plan, and in the knowledge that you've just said that 2 fields lower are in that plan, unfortunately the planning authority has no jurisdiction over the highways authority, and unfortunately highways authorities look at now, not future impact, and if it meets adequate, it seems to pass, hence Butchers Park, which we're all waiting for to see the outcome of that under appeal. And even though this is not included, and it may well be included in the future, my recommendation would be that, well, I'm sorry, you have to wait. Thank
you. Councillor Mrs Johnson.
Thank you. I support that. I think that the Town Council should not support this application. If the land is not allocated in the local plan, then we certainly shouldn't be supporting it for housing at this stage.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other comments? Councillor Sanders.
Chairman, I did actually look at the drawings earlier on tonight, and the red line would seem to encompass all of the fields in the planning application, including those that are within the local plan, and one of the fields which is not. And unless I've misunderstood the application, it would seem that the total number of houses is distributed across the whole of that area, so all 3 fields. It would mean that one field is not currently allocated, but I think the application that's before us at the moment, looking at the drawings, assumes that the numbers are spread across the 3 fields. That was my impression from looking at the plans earlier on. So I think the council may well wish to recommend refusal, but I think it needs to get its wording carefully sorted out so that it's not simply on the basis that it's not within the local plan, because I think some of the application does fall within the local, not the local plan, but does fall within the land that's allocated.
To my recollection, Mr Deputy Mayor, the land is not within the current local plan. It may have been in the one that was shelved in the emerging, but that never went anywhere. So strictly speaking, it is not within a local plan. It is not within an adopted local plan.
2 of the fields are.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, history makes this complicated. What I have in front of me is the joint local plan map for Tavistock, and I have also in front of me a map of the proposed development, and it's possible to marry them up. Now, I'm not familiar with what was in any previous plans. I'm only looking at the proposed joint local plan, but as far as I can make out, there is no overlap. The 3 fields that the Cavanagh Homes wish to build on are not included in the shaded area on the joint local plan map. They may perhaps be on an earlier map.
No, I think it's only 3 fields. It's the 2 fields that are the furthest away from the toll house, opposite Herdwick Road. Those are in a current plan, they're not in the developing local plan, as you say, but that is still in its development stage. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't refuse it. I'm simply saying that you just need to choose a form of word which says that, you know, part of the development falls within an area which has not been allocated, or that's all, rather than saying it's all is.
Do you want to say what I've got so far? I don't know whether this captures what members are trying to say, so if not, please say. I think what we're moving towards is a recommendation for refusal because the site itself is not wholly encompassed within land identified for development within the local plan. It represents an undesirable built extension or built development into the open countryside and is served by an unsatisfactory access onto the highway in an area where the highway itself is unsuitable to accommodate the additional flows of traffic projected. I don't know whether that captures what it is.
That was very good. Councillor Ward, how do you feel about that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I couldn't have done it better myself.
So you would like to propose that, Councillor Ward? Yes, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Venning. All those in favour of that wording? And noting the 2 abstentions. Thank you.
The other sets of minutes are also approved.
And, yeah, so Councillor Ward, you just now need to finish presenting the rest of those minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There is nothing else contentious in the minutes of the meeting of the 19th of July, and therefore I beg to move.
Thank you. Councillor Swickham, is that okay? Thank you. All those in favour, please. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, we move on to item 9, service reports. Yes, please. The General Manager's report.
If I may, Madam Mayor, there's just one thing I would like to say, which is more of a general point, and I don't say this very often, but I would in particular like to commend the General Manager for the work he undertook in relation to the Visit of the Man engine to Tavistock. It was considerable, it was above and beyond the call of duty, and it did have a material and positive impact upon the delivery of that event, and I'd just like it to be placed on record. Thank you.
I'll get to you at the end, Mr. Southall.
That's handy to have for his appraisal when it comes in.
seems like everyone's sort of going in, and I'm just going to wait until the right bit on the agenda for me. Right, does anybody have anything to question from the General Manager's report, please? No? Okay, we're moving on. The Works Department report. Any questions or anything to add, say? No? Okay. The Tavistock Town Hall report, you will see in front of you tonight. I've asked for a copy of the new brochure to be presented to you, apart from Councillor Sanders, who was having a really good read earlier of the document to discover that it's 190 or 200 in places for a sit-down meal. Other than that, I think it's a very, very good brochure to be given out to prospective users of the facility. The price is in at the back, so it can be slotted in and out of every one. So as things go up, you don't have to necessarily print off the brochure again. And it has been produced in-house, and a former member of staff actually then printed it for us as well. So almost like full house internally. The next, is there any questions on the Town Hall report or anything? No. On the pannier market report, we need to just go through the Christmas opening dates. So if I ask, first of all, does anybody have any questions on the pannier market report? No, I'd like to congratulate the pannier market on their road to Rio. It was a very bright, beautiful, everything. It was just a very colourful market that Saturday that had lots and lots of positive feedback on Facebook and from visitors, stall holders. Everybody joined in and seemed to have a great deal of fun on the day. So we'd like to congratulate them. And then if you can then cast your eye further down that page to the Christmas opening times, we need to formally adopt those today, if everybody is happy with those. Are there any questions about those dates? No? May I have a proposer, please, then? Councillor Mrs Wickham. Thank you, Councillor Smith. All those in favour, please. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, we now move on to finance and other matters. So we have the minutes of the Chamber meeting from the 6th of June. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Mrs Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd be interested to know who was present at these meetings. We have two sets of minutes here, and it doesn't say who was present at either. It does refer to people with their initials, but it's a bit difficult to determine who they are if you don't know who was there in the first place.
We have raised that matter with the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything from the minutes on the 4th of July? No? Okay. The Assistant to the Town Clerk's report. Could you please note the dates for your diary of civic events for this year and next year? Sorry. Councillor Mrs Johnson, sorry, it's the first one.
Thank you. Can I just make an observation here? Earlier on, I see there was a performance indicator about the number of councillors attending training. I think it's a great shame when the training events are at South Molton, South Brent and Exeter. It's quite a long way to go, especially for anybody who's working, and difficult to get to. It means you've got to take a day's leave to get there. We did have some very good local training that was organised through the link committees, which Councillor Sheldon was involved with a couple of years ago. It's a shame that we can't have some that's a bit more local, because just for me to go to South Molton is just not a possibility.
Get that right. Okay, thank you. Councillor Sheldon, you've now got 2 points.
Yes, the training is the monies from the link was granted as a normal grant. It has, although they keep trying to take it over, the Southern Parishes link, it's actually been handed out as a grant. The grant money doesn't come from the Southern Parishes link. I'll just add that, because I'm probably going to be in another argument, because they're trying to use that money for other things. But yes, there's still some money in the kitty, and there will be courses. They're normally held October, November. There's only myself organising now, but like chairman skills, and other things, and new councillors and refresher courses. So I'm hoping that they're going. I've always wanted to use the Rundle room whenever it was going to be ready as a sort of presentation where there's an overhead projector, etc. We haven't quite got there yet. But I would add that if any councillor feels that they want any training in the chairmanship or councillor or budget and precepts or something like that, then please drop me an email. But I will be circulating an email around asking for what sort of, if there's any interest in these courses, and there obviously is. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sheldon, you had your own point to raise.
I did have my own point. I didn't know whether anybody had another point on that because I jumped in last time and we weren't quite ready. I was only going to mention the policy of the polling cards because we've got the by-election mentioned here. I know we referred to a previous council decision, but I'd like to scrub that previous decision as we've done in the past, and when we do have an election, that a decision does come to the council whether or not we have polling cards, because there will be a lot of people out there who will not know there's an election going on. I know they'll say the Tavistock Times and people are talking about it in the signs. There will still be people who do not know. The people who will know are the people who get postal votes. And I would imagine there's quite a few of them, and it's lowered down in the amount of postal cards because people have got postal votes. So I'm asking now that we get a proper price for the next by-election. There may never be one before the next council, and we make a decision as a council whether we have polling cards based on what the price will be, and so people can be told in the town that there's an election going on under any circumstances. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the Assistant to the Town Clerk about her report, apart from what we've heard? No? Thank you. Right, we have minutes of the bid directors meeting from the 15th of June. Any questions? Tavistock Heritage meeting from the 14th of June. No. Destination Oakhampton. Any questions? And Pixon Lane Depot, which will be an oral update, please, Mr. Town Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This follows on from a reference at our last meeting where we said we were looking for temporary accommodation for the depot. We have been seeking to achieve that working with the Borough Council in relation to 2 units it currently has available. We're continuing that line of thought, notwithstanding that the Borough Council has decided to let them via informal tender rather than the normal commercial process of negotiation with prospective tenants. So we'll need to see what the outcome of that process is, and we'll report back to you in due course.
Okay, thank you. Just need to ask the Town Clerk. Just in case anybody thinks I had forgotten, I hadn't. The full council action log, where it was going to come forward, did anybody have any questions on it? No? Right, and we'll put it back onto the agenda under the full minutes, etc. Right, item 11 is to receive such communications or reports as may be submitted by the Town Mayor. I would really like to say that yesterday I could not have been more proud to have been Mayor of this town than I was. The whole atmosphere down in the square, going along Plymouth Road, was absolutely incredible. Yes, Councillor Smith was quite right to have alluded to a few little difficulties, and we'll put them like that. Our general manager, I think, sort of came sweeping in on his broomstick and swept everything clear and got it all sorted out. And he worked some incredible hours, even to the bizarre extent he sent me an email at 11:15 at Friday night asking me to phone somebody, and couldn't quite understand it when I asked if he was having a laugh. He was obviously so tired he hadn't quite realised what he'd written. But he was working that dedicatedly over the whole weekend and a few weeks before. And I'm sorry, I am going to call you Wayne in this bit, but Wayne, thank you so much for everything you did for this town. I know that it would have been quite easy for us to have stuck to our guns and said, no, we're not doing it, but actually it's very difficult when you're known for being somebody who can organise events the way our general manager can, with Goose Fair, Dickensian, Cycle of Britain and all the rest of it, and all the other events that he's done, that to sort of, you know, say, I'm not doing it, everybody would have just, it would have been wrong. So for right or wrong reasons, we put in the level of work. The general manager put in the level of work. Some of us just stood on the sidelines and sort of had to sort of just keep pressing forwards and holding other people back, is another polite way of putting it. But thank you very, very much for everything that you have done. Every accolade going, you deserve for what you did to save yesterday, because the people who came to this town as visitors and everything else would never have known that the headaches that have gone on for the last 3+ months, and particularly in the last month, to get this event organised. They wouldn't have had a clue. They came here and saw the most fantastic event. They saw the town at its very, very best. And they saw this unveiling of this man engine that today has been in The Guardian, The Daily Telegraph, The Daily Mail, The Daily Express, pages in the Western Morning News. It has been all over Facebook, all over Twitter. It's absolutely everywhere. I've had people from all over the country saying, we've seen you on the news, it's made the national news at lunchtimes. We could not have paid for that sort of publicity by any stretch of the imagination. And people were stopping me because I did wear the robes yesterday, because he would never... Eventually. And the man engine kept telling me he wouldn't give me my present unless I wore the robes. But people were stopping me and saying about how proud we should be of our town and how lucky we are to live here. And I do have to give a little thanks to Councillor Williamson. You might not know why, actually, but I believe that your business and Higher Longford had things in their newsletters encouraging people to come and stay, because they told me where they were all staying. So thank you very much, Councillor Williamson. And I know Mr Harper's still quietly at the back, but the Chamber tried very hard to work with us all in the bid and everyone else, and he knows the difficulties that we've experienced as well, because he's got very het up, but that's not much unusual for Mr Harper. I've sat in with you in some of the meetings. So yes, but for the town of Tavistock itself, it was absolutely fantastic. And I do hope that as many of you got down there and saw what you could and everything else. And that is all for communications. Just to remind you all, though, about the civic service, because the invites will probably start to go out before our next meeting at the beginning of the month, and then Mrs Smallcombe will just be reminding everybody by the next meeting. I have no other communications apart from to say enjoy your time off for the summer break, and everybody stays safe. The other little communication is to welcome back Sam. We have missed you, and it's lovely to see you back with us, Sam. And hopefully you'll be here for a little while again before not get sent back to Oakie, that we get to keep you for a while. And the next item is item 12, urgent matters. I don't have any. Do you have any, Mr? Oh, sorry.
No, it's just based on the man engine event, just to say there were a number of local partner organisations that did try to engage or did engage in the event as well, and they should also be commended for their input.
Yes, thank you. Yes, right. Good night, Sam. Good night, Mr. Harper. If we could now move into items requiring a decision and the Public Body Submission to Meetings Act. You're going.